So, you're a recent college graduate or young professional who is about to start your job search, or maybe you've been job searching for a while with no luck. My guest today is Jared Brown. He is a senior recruiter with lots of knowledge about today's job search challenges. Welcome to the Young Professionals Career Catalyst, Jared.
Thanks, Shelley.
So, tell me, you've done a lot of time in recruiting and talent acquisition. How many years have you been doing this?
About 24 years. Started back just before the turn of the century to get us a little bit older here.
Oh, geez. I didn't think of it that way, but it does sound like it was a long time then. So what types of jobs have you recruited for in the past?
Uh, well, a lot of different areas, mostly corporate recruiting for every size company from Fortune 500 to mom and pops. But I've also done a lot of different other types of positions with from manufacturing to some things that have been on the outskirts. But short list would be C-level or executive level, executive recruiting, administrative and support, as well as IT, engineering, accounting, legal, human resources, marketing and sales, scientific,
Wow.
healthcare. I even have done a meteorologist and TV producers.
Oh,
So
wow.
it kind
I
of
think that
spans.
covers everything.
Yeah, there's a long list.
So, what's the most number of jobs that you were working to fill at one time?
Oh, it's a good question. So I guess you can say probably the most I've had was 80 on my board. Now that can be determined in a few different ways. From the inside, and that's kind of where I'm looking from is to give everyone sort of the inside peek. Is that there may be a large ask where it's like we need to fulfill 60 sales roles and it's spread throughout the country, so it's one role that
Right.
but there's 80 headcount or 60 headcount, and then there's others that are sprinkled in. So I guess you could say that the most with the same singular role has been between 60 and 80. The diversity roles, where the diverse, not diversity, but the diverse range of titles that I've handled, probably close to 20 at the same time.
Okay.
And, uh, you know, good recruiting departments and, talent acquisition teams will level those positions, because it's about setting the expectation with the hiring manager and the hiring team and setting priority levels, which is a big
Right.
thing that a lot of recruiters try to do. And that's a hard thing because everybody's fire wants to be put out, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that I was part of, and that has seemed to come more and more into play is setting it into a tier level, meaning how urgent is the role to be filled,
Mhm.
and really establishing that so that when you're working on positions, you're not spending all your time working on one or trying to work them all at the same time because it's incredibly inefficient and it won't
Right.
work.
Right.
So setting that level of expectation, based on the department size, how close are they to headcount? So, if they're supposed to be at 10 people, do they only have 9 people? Or are they at like they're at 6 people when they're running for 10? It's like, okay, well, that department really needs the help, right? So,
Right.
so the variety of positions that I've worked on has been, I'd say around the 20 mark as far as the individual type positions, and then probably 60 to 80 when it comes to the same type of position.
Wow. Well, and I think that's important to understand because from a job candidate's perspective, why is it taking so long? Why are they not getting back to me? How hard can it be? So I think it's good to understand what goes on the other side
Yeah.
for job seekers. So from your experience, how many resumes or applications does a typical position typically receive?
Wow. That is a hard question to answer. um, in today's market, there's a lot of people that are looking. It's just that kind of an economy. We're in that slump, and the way that it goes is, there's ups and downs, and then there's sometimes where there's a ton of jobs to go for. There's a ton of, or there's a ton of candidates, and then there's that swing time where it's like, okay, this is a great balance. This is what we like as a recruiter.
Right.
Um, as far as uh, as far as the amount of positions, the lesser the experience that's needed for the position in general, the more there are for the resumes
True.
that come in. So if it's an entry level type of customer service role or something in retail, you get a lot of resumes that'll come in. But that's sort of changing these days. Where if I have a CEO that I'm looking for, I'll get a lot of resumes for that as well. They'll
Wow.
come pouring in because that's just kind of the way the market is. And it's also where the technology has driven us. There's a lot more outreach. So when a company has a need for, an executive, assistant, or something, we'll just use that as an example. They can post that locally, where it used to be that, you kind of just went to the local area. Prior to COVID, everybody went and traveled to their position for the most part on a daily basis. Now that everything's opened up for remote or hybrid type of situations, and now that really LinkedIn and the career boards, ZipRecruiter and what have you, have really blown out to the entire nation. Now you're getting a lot more resumes from a lot further out, that you wouldn't
True.
normally get. So it's hard to answer that question as far as how many, but I can tell you this: there's probably, with all of the different tools that are out there for both companies and candidates,
Hmm.
they probably get 100 applications within about 10 minutes.
Wow. That's just crazy.
Yeah, it is difficult.
But that's what technology has done. It's given us the ability to have access to so much more information, and that includes job postings. So it's not like it was in our early days where you opened the newspaper, looked at the classifieds, and then you applied for something and, of course, was in your local area. So,
Right.
yeah, there's a lot more availability of information, which leads to a lot more candidates, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So what are some tips and tricks to get an employer to pay attention to your resume versus all of the other resumes that have been sent in for that one position?
Great question, because I don't want to focus on the challenges that are out there as far as here's what we're up against. But it when you're addressing and trying to solve and get to that, what's going to be my force multiplier to be able to to circumvent some of these technologies. I think you know and this is kind of where our wisdom comes into play, Shelley, where we've been in this for a long time. The one thing that has never changed is that one-to-one networking connection.
Right.
It's being able to have a little bit of an in with somebody. Now, so if you're young in your career, or you're making a career switch, it's like, well, I don't really have a big network. How do I do that? I can talk to my uncle or my aunt. Fine, that's where you start.
Right.
That's where you get it out there. And
Exactly.
the professional side of LinkedIn, not the second. LinkedIn is a professional side, as versus where it's like, okay, at Facebook or Twitter or something. You know, um, LinkedIn is really where you can start to grow that network quite a
Mhm.
bit. So some tools and tricks that do work, but there's not one single thing that works. See, there's a lot of things that you do have to do. First thing is research the company, which I'm sure everybody's been told to do, right? How
Right.
much can you actually research that company? Well, what's important to that company? Go on their page,
Mhm.
and of course hit their info spot. About us is really where's that. So you find a little bit there, but the important piece is really go to the news section if they've got one.
Right.
Go to that news section. What are they highlighting as their important pieces? Because you know rarely do they go in and really change that about us. Once they build the website, it's like, okay, here's what we did, here's where we came from, here's what we're working on, great.
Right.
But when it goes to the news section, it's like, here's what we're really working on, here's what's important to us, and here's what the the bang for the buck is. If they don't have news that they're posting on their own website, go to Google or go to another search engine and pull up the news and set yourself for alerts.
Right.
So you can set those alerts up where it's like, okay, if ABC company is posting something, give me a news alert as to any language that comes on in about ABC company.
Right.
Then once you have that information, you can utilize that in a lot of different ways, as far as maybe what your cover letter is, or at least your intro. But
Hmm.
I think the best key here is you have some information, you know some of the heads of the company now because they are often mentioned in those articles. Go to LinkedIn and send out a connection request for that person.
Yes.
Find the hiring manager if you can, and
Right.
don't say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Are you looking for, I have this, I have that." Stay away from the I haves and here's who
Right.
I am's, and come at it at an angle of true interest. Not, don't be inauthentic, but what kind of lines up with your intrinsic value, and say, okay, I'm an engineer and I love working in the environmental space. Okay, that's
Mhm.
great. So why do you like to work? Well, I just I walked out and I hike every weekend. So that's what got me into being, and I'm kind of a technical person. So that's kind of where my career started. Well, if you find an environmental company that you're after, and you see that they posted an article, and Jane Doe is heading up a project of here X, Y, or Z, see if you can connect with Jane Doe, or send a private message or a LinkedIn message, and say, hey, I noticed this article about you, or you
Mhm.
were mentioned in this article, and that's really exciting. How did it, I'm trying to get into the or I'm making a switch, or I'm in this industry. What prompted you to really go after this project? Get them talking about what excites them, because it's
Right.
also what excites you, and it creates a link that
Mhm.
raises your value, and then later on you start to go, okay, well, by the way, I'm also looking for a position, and that's where you're setting up a connection, and that could be a long game, that could be a 2-week game, or it could be a 6-month game,
Right. Yeah.
so that's important. And I think another sort of reality here that's okay is it's going to take a while.
Right.
Be ready for that.
Yes.
Be vigilant. It's not a question of, hey, there's 1,000 jobs out there, I'm only one of a bunch of candidates, why aren't they even looking at me? There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes to screen resumes, but it's also, how do I get that attention? That's exactly how. Talk to them in their own language.
Right.
What
Right.
makes them excited? Because think about it. How many people are really going to come from an angle of, hey, I noticed what you did. It really is interesting to me. I was, while I'm out here looking for a position, I'm trying to understand a little bit more about what makes people excited here. Things like that. Whatever,
Mm.
and utilize that as your angle to get in and get noticed.
Yeah.
Another piece is, don't be afraid. Get on. As you can tell, LinkedIn is kind of the hub where a lot of people can utilize this information, right? Um, Once you find, sometimes they'll post even on LinkedIn, here's the person who's posting that job,
Yes.
here's the hiring manager. Well, if you look up in people and go into your filters, and depending on what level LinkedIn you've got, whether it's the free version or premium or business or whatever, go into that and find out who's connected to that person,
Hmm.
and just connect with those people. Bang, bang, bang. It's a connection. What do you have to lose? And you don't
Right.
have to intro yourself to every single one.
Hmm.
But start to build that network out, because what a lot of times what talent acquisition will do, whether it's HR and inside, or staffing firms, is they will look this person up on LinkedIn and go, oh, we've got 16 mutual connections. Who else are they connected to?
Right.
And that's, even though it might be only 1% of a leg up, it's still a
Mhm.
leg up, and it
Right.
can help you.
Yeah.
Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Just yeah, in general, the tips and tricks to try to get a recruiter to notice you. And as you said, LinkedIn is going to play a big part in this. And one thing that a lot of young professionals don't think about is if you have a position of interest or a company of interest, go on LinkedIn and then search to see who graduated from your college. that
Yeah.
common connection, that can help you get an in for a conversation or an interview. So definitely take advantage of that, because I know when people reach out to me, I'm a Penn State graduate. If you reach out to me and you're a student at Penn State, I'm going to be all excited to talk to you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I think Penn State has more graduates employed in the world than any other university.
Yeah, yeah. And we also, they say we have the largest alumni network
Yeah.
in the nation as well. So, I mean, that alumni network, whether it's a large school or a small school, people want to talk to you if they know that you have that in common. So,
Yeah,
it's a definite thing to take advantage of.
absolutely.
So there's this, these ATS systems out there, these applicant tracking systems.
Mhm.
Explain how that works for the hiring process.
Okay. Well, again, there's a lot of variety to that. There's a lot of different ATSs out there. Um, so the history of ATS, it really started to show itself kind of in the late 90s. And there's a lot of different ways that those systems have changed.
Okay.
So sometimes there's a system where it's an old system that they've utilized for years and years and years, and they've just kind of added on to it.
Right.
So it can work a little bit clunky, which, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because recruiters have to deal with that, you
Right.
know. So the majority of the time is we're trying to be efficient, right? We're trying to get through as many resumes as we can and screen. And the more steps there are in a process, the more it belabors that ability to screen and go through people. Because a lot of times recruiters just want to go, I just want to go through resumes, and it's just click to click to click to click to click to click. And this goes through all of HR, sales, you name it. If it ain't in the system, it didn't happen, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So there's notes that need to be put in, and what they call dispositioning. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is there's newer systems out there that don't really relate to the older systems. So sometimes there's an ATS or an applicant tracking system that's also a separate piece to what they call an HRIS,
Right.
a human resources information system. So it's, those two have to work together. And so then there's another step that the recruiters have to go through and try and, make everybody talk. So whereas before, you can go through, 20, 30 resumes in an hour, that might drop down to about 10 because of all the other extra work that you have to do. So
Wow.
that can really weigh down the recruiter's time on top of being able to having to do phone screens and actually look through the resumes and what have you. So that's one aspect. But the good part is that we're going through a lot of resumes. How do you remember everybody? I don't know. The older I get, the harder it is for me to remember people, even their names. I'm better with faces and stories. But that system allows us to go back and keep the notes in one section, as well as if I'm out for the day or I'm on vacation or something, where I move over to another project or something, another recruiter can come in and go, okay, oh, here's Shelly. All right. And get my information that I put down and not waste Shelly's time with, hey, this is brand new. Hopefully, anyway, hopefully the recruiter's good enough to be able to do that and go back and say, hey, I know you spoke with Jared, Shelly. So I understand there's some this, and this. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? And versus coming back to Shelly and going, hi, Shelly. I know you applied for this position, and go straight from the beginning, right? Ellie hates that, right? Everybody hates, like, I already told them the story.
Exactly.
So not only does that work for the recruiting side, but the ideal way that it's supposed to work is that the first point of contact starts that information, and the telephone game begins from there.
Right.
I put in good qualifying notes and copious notes about the person that is then supposed to be read by the next interviewer.
Right.
The next interviewer then piggybacks off of my questions and goes deeper. Some of the challenges that people will find these days, especially with an ATS, is that either the information wasn't put in the system or the people down the line aren't really utilizing the system as much.
Right.
So they don't go in and look at the notes. And you wind up getting asked the same questions, which is a pro tip, is treat every interview as if it's the first interview,
Right.
and avoid saying, well, as I told Jared in the last call, nobody wants to hear that.
Right. Right. Right.
You're kind of telling them shame on you. You should have read the notes, right?
Right.
Excuse me. But other application or applicant tracking systems are very beneficial in that they set up these screening processes.
Right.
Okay, so it goes from here's what the first screen is supposed to look like, or first interview. Here's what the second interview looks like, and it's different questions.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you ask, tell me about yourself, and that's in the first interview.
Hmm.
That's probably a bad question because everybody asks that one, right? But tell me what types of positions you've worked on as a recruiter, or if that's what you're interviewing for, or what aspects of human resources or engineering you've worked on. Those answers then get captured by the AI system or the ATS itself, and then moves over into that next line of questioning, so that the next person in the hiring process is forced to say, "Oh, I see you've worked on this type of role before, these projects. Could you tell me more about this?" And it advances those questions so
Okay.
that you have a much stronger interview, experience, because that's the focus. Hopefully a lot of the ATSs, are starting to get that,
Mhm.
where it's like the candidate experience determines heavily whether the offer will be accepted.
Right. Yeah.
So, that's where we're starting to get some balance here. That's a great thing. It's like it's
Mhm.
not what the jump for the company. It's hey, the companies are respecting a lot more about the candidate themselves and the experience, and they want you, and so it's not just at the end, it's
Mhm.
got the entire experience. Um, and then, ATSs, they have a lot of automatic functions in there. So I want to bring up this point. A lot of people are getting rejections or not getting rejections.
Right.
Please don't read into those rejections deeply, because a lot of them are automated now.
Mhm.
So as a recruiter, and again, there's just like in every industry, there's great recruiters, there's not so great recruiters, or talent acquisition people. And depending on how heavy the workflow is, they may just go through and say, look, we filled the position, or we're putting it on hold or something, click, 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 click. And they click through everybody that's been, that's submitted,
Right.
and send a rejection letter. And it's a formed rejection letter that kind of puts your name in where it needs to be. And they can select which rejection is, or putting this position on hold, or, we thank you for your time and energy, and, XYZ. And then they've got some. I'm really giving away some tips here, but they can say send 3 days after the application,
Right.
or 3 days after today, 5 days after today,
Mhm.
24 hours after today. So that's why you get rejection letters on a Sunday. You know,
Oh, okay.
it's like, oh well, wow, they're working on a Sunday. It's like, no, they're not. They're maybe
It's
so
just automated.
automated thing, and that's there to kind of go back to what I was talking about, manage that influx of workflow. So is it fair? I don't think anybody thinks it's fair.
Mhm.
So being in talent acquisition, it's like the reason why most people are in human resources or talent acquisition is because they enjoy talking to people.
Right.
They
Yeah.
like that one-to-one. I want to find out about you. But when you're inundated, it's kind of like being a personal chef versus
Mhm.
being a line cook. It's like personal chef gets to kind of customize and do things, and oh wow, this is great. And then you get a line cook, it's like boom, burger, 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 and you're doing your best to get it out because some managers behind you going, we need more burgers. Um, and so the ATS is very helpful, but it can be cumbersome. But
Mhm.
there's definitely processes that are put in place. But what that's where it comes in as well, as far as the LinkedIn and networking and what have you, is that that's what's going to go and take the person from, oh, this person hit me on LinkedIn. Are they in the ATS? Oh, they are, but nobody's talked to them yet. All right, let me get in touch with with talent acquisition. Hey, could you reach out to Shelly?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you
Yeah.
want, right?
That's your
So
advantage. Yeah.
that's the advantage. So it is exactly that. It's an applicant tracking system.
Hmm.
So they're tracking you. What part of that process, or what part of the steps are you in? Who knows? But don't take it personally
Hmm.
that you've been, rejected or denied. It's that, it's mostly because of the inundation.
Right.
And you may not have the skill sets, that they're
Mhm.
actually looking for. But it's just another step. It's just, that's where you kind of have to have your tough skin a little bit and go, you know what? No one's telling me, hey, Shelly, you're not good.
Right.
What we're saying is we're moving on to other processes because we've got what we need,
Right.
or it's been put on hold, or whichever. The reasoning behind it, not sure. Um, but another key for ATS is they use a lot of keyword searching.
Right.
So if I have a position that's open, in sales or engineering, whatever, and it says, they need to have, um, you know, these different types of programs, whatever. Well, recruiter's going to go in and go, okay, find me resumes that have this,
Right.
just like
Yeah.
you do for, Career Builder and Monster and, ZipRecruiter and LinkedIn and all that. They do keyword searches. So is it good to have keywords all over your resume? Yeah. Yeah. Some
Yes.
people even go as far as putting it into one section where it's like, boom, here's all my keywords. And that's just to get noticed, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
avoid being an expert on something that you really aren't. But if you have some experience with something, put it in there.
Sure.
Or as you're looking at job descriptions, for example, if I don't know, if a talent acquisition person's looking for a position, they may say, okay, sourcing. Sourcing might be uh, a keyword that they put on their resume, but
Hmm.
the job description says strategic sourcing.
Oh, right.
Well, put in strategic sourcing because it's still going to pull sourcing out of your resume if somebody's searching just for that, but it's also going to pull strategic sourcing. So,
Right.
and that's why also you'll see, I know this is a little old school, but instead of saying Microsoft Office, people put in Microsoft Office or MS Office or Word, PowerPoint, Excel. They do all of that. And
Right.
so how do you avoid it from being this long? Well, you've got your functional resume and you've got the resume that you use when you go for the interview. You can
Mhm.
have two different resumes, and there's some other things out there. What I would avoid doing though is something that came up some time ago where you put in every keyword you could possibly put in or phrase
Right.
and then change the font color to white
Oh, no.
so that it didn't
That's
say there. Don't do that.
no.
Don't do that. So it's deception, in a way. And it's a way to get around it worked, for a few years way back when, but it's not something that you should be doing
No. Well, it's deceptive
now.
on,
It is.
on the job seeker's part. It's just deception. And that's,
Mhm.
I think employers are smart enough to know that little trick now.
You'll think you're getting around it by doing that.
Right, right. So is there any ATS misinformation out there that you'd like to correct or, maybe explain?
Um, for the most part, there's not an automatic. I mean, it's hard to say with AI these days what's really happening in every single situation, but I'd say
Mhm.
99% of the time, someone has looked at your resume and it's not, hey, apply to this, and it's an automatic rejection based on, them just scraping the resume and looking. Will that change a little bit for AI? I'm sure. I'm
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
But for the most part, someone has looked at your resume, and someone has at least looked through some of the keyword pieces of it. Um, and so it's not there's very few automatic rejections that happen, um, unless it's just completely blatant. They just look at the job title, but still somebody's looking, at your resume.
Right.
Um, as far as things like um, profiling, that does not kick you out automatically either. That's not something that's legal to do.
Right.
So if you don't fit, the what maybe an initiative on their side, where they're focusing more on one population or another, it's not like, okay, well, I'm not, I don't have 15 years of experience, so they're automatically rejecting me, or
Hmm.
I'm not young enough. Those things don't happen.
Okay.
It's not cool, so they don't do it. So don't feel that all of a sudden you put your resume in plus with all your application questions, and it just goes, oh, it doesn't fit, goodbye.
Right.
you know every person is gold, to most talent acquisitions. So if they can't call on you for your expertise right now, they're going to call on it later. So there's no rejections that are immediate. We do have a skill set that allows us to look at people
Hmm.
and find the things that aren't on the resume.
Right.
So we don't want to automatically just go nope for anything.
Well, I mean, from what I had experienced, I believe that the hiring team can put in like a knockout question. Like, for
Yeah,
instance, when I worked in healthcare, if it was a clinical position, our knockout question was, do you have a current CPR certification?
right.
And if they said no, then they really didn't go any further in the process. That's still the case, correct?
That is still the case, but that's a knockout question. That's something where it's not, if you don't have it and it's an absolute that's needed for the position.
Hmm.
Yeah, it can knock you out, but it's not going to knock you out of the system.
Right.
And a recruiter is still going to look through because there's human error.
True.
There's people who go through applications, and if this is your 19th application today, and you're
Yes.
used to question number 5 being, are you able to work remotely? And it's like, yes or no, no, or relocate, no. But question 5 is, do you have this certification? You hit it by accident. Well, yeah, the recruiter might not look at your resume first, but
Right.
they're still going to go back and say, you know what, I'm desperate for this position. They do have this certification on the resume. Why did they hit no? Well, guess
Oh,
what?
okay.
Give me one of my screening questions,
Hmm.
and go through it, because one of the things that I've always said, Shelly, is no one is a professional resume writer.
Right.
If you are, it better be your business.
Hmm.
And if you feel that you are because you've done so many interviews, well, then why have you done so many interviews? Your resume is not, everything needs to be changed in, almost on a position by position basis. But no one's professional about it, as far
Hmm.
as it's exactly what every recruiter needs. So, what we train to do, and over our years of experience, is to look past the resume and see what they have done that may not be on the resume. So it's worth asking the question. So even though there's knockout questions, it doesn't mean that the recruiter is just going to be like, I don't want to talk to them.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, well, wait a second, they've got everything on their resume. I can't understand how you wouldn't have this certification.
Right.
There's
Exactly. Yes.
always
Okay.
a loophole.
So when you bring in a candidate for an interview, what types of qualities or behaviors make them stand out as a top candidate?
Hmm. Knowing the company,
Okay.
knowing, have done their research, and it's not from an impressive, to impress us type of a situation. It's, this person is going to speak more towards what we're looking for, as versus having generic answers. Because I've been through a ton of people who've already had those generic answers.
Right.
So knowing the company, having a true, and this kind of goes for where I've gone through my entire career, is intrinsic value is what drives you.
Right.
What is it that really gets you excited about this career? Is everything you do in your job on a daily basis exciting? No.
No.
No, even if you're, a movie star, it's still not exciting all day long, but there's that drive that you have that allows you to be to bring that extra oomph and have that intrinsic. So the more the more you are in tune with the intrinsic value of the position and your intrinsic value of yourself, the better it's going to read in the interview.
Right.
So don't fake it because you're getting desperate, or because it's like, well, I just need a job. If it's a job, if it's a I just need to make money job, then you should go for a job that I just need to make money until I find what I want to do. Okay,
Right.
because recruiters are going to come in and be like, yeah, this is. If you love telemarketing, That's rare to find. You know, most people do telemarketing once. But if but if it's something that you're really driving to do, if you're in, poli sci or communications, or you've done something more in history, and you find that niche that's going to drive that, because recruiters are going to pick that up. And when I say recruiting, it's the entire hiring team.
Right.
We typically work together, so that's going to translate through without you having to work for it
Hmm.
if you got a passion for it. And it doesn't mean that you eat, sleep, and breathe whatever you're doing. It's that means something to you.
Hmm.
So that stands out. Also, nowadays it's kind of it used to be everybody dressed in professional business wear, whether that's a suit or or some sort of tie and or blouse, and things that traditional I'm working in business type of thing. Well,
Hmm.
that's changed a lot, but there may still be an expectation when you go in for the interview or you're on camera for the interview to have that sort of look. Don't be afraid. If a
Hmm.
recruiter or talent acquisition or human resources reaches out to you and says, "Hey, we'd love to interview you," great. Here's where my availability is. Given the circumstances of today, and I'll be on Zoom, what kind of attire would you expect? You know,
Okay.
you
Right.
know, don't be afraid to ask that kind of question, depending on the level of recruiter. And then the standby is always at least have something that's professional enough, as if you're going to go to, a networking event.
Okay.
Okay, where if you're going into a networking event, and the way to find out about that, go into LinkedIn, type in networking events, and
Mhm.
find them, and then see the pictures afterwards, the after picture, because everybody likes to take big pictures. Or here's what we saw. How's everybody dressed?
True.
You can't really go, wrong that way. But you don't want to underdress either. Obviously, don't wear a sweatshirt just because you're used to being on camera with, doing FaceTime, or maybe you were with a company that was incredibly relaxed.
Hmm.
You know, um, level set. Do your research a bit, but always fault on the side of, or default on the side of being a little bit more professional than not. So
Yes.
business casual is okay,
Hmm.
but dress to be you too. You don't want to go to the interview being like, "This is how I dress every day," either.
Right.
And look at the way that people are in the company. If they're all dressing in suits and dresses and skirts, and that's their thing, every company picture has that. Well, that kind of gives you the tip that that's where I kind of need to be if I'm going to interview, and am I okay with being on that for the next, for the daily grind.
Yes, that's true. Good point. Yeah, dress code does matter.
Today.
um, so, what's one piece of career advice you would give today's young professional or recent college graduate to help them launch a successful career?
Don't lose your way.
Okay.
What I mean by that is what I mentioned in the last point. Your intrinsic value is critical.
Right.
Why did you, if you went to school, if you went to secondary education, or post-secondary education, if you went into a higher level, if it was a trade school, whatever it is, or you didn't, maybe you went straight into the workforce, recognize the things that you enjoy doing and drive that into what your career is. Because if you don't, you're going to be resentful
Yes.
later on.
True.
Part B to that is your intrinsic value can also change. You
Hmm.
know, there's a lot of things that can change that. Whether you get married or find a partner, when you move in with someone, when you get a puppy, when you have a child, when a life event happens, it can change kind of what things mean to you, and that's okay.
Yes.
But just be cognizant and aware of what really drives you. I'm going to give you a really quick example. Do we have a little bit more time?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is going back years, right? Where I was working with a human resources connection, who worked with agencies. This is when I was working in an agency, and it was a major manufacturing company. She had worked with a lot of different agencies, and I was trying to get in. I was like, look, I can help you, I can help you, I can help you, right? Which wasn't the favorite part of my job, trying to get into a company. But anyway, she said, look, okay, I like you, but here's how you're going to get in. My husband got laid off 3 months ago. He's an accountant, and I can't stand him being home anymore. So if you find him a job, you are in, and you'll be number 1 or 2 that I call. And I went, okay, challenge accepted. So she said, okay, his name was Andy. So I wound up calling Andy, and the Carol, the person I spoke to before, she said he's home all the time, and he does nothing but cook. And every week he's cooking all week long, and then he invites the entire family over on the weekend. I need time to decompress. I can't. My family, I love my family, but they're here all the time every weekend, and it's different family and it's friends. So I've got 25 people in my house every weekend. I don't want that.
Right.
Okay. So I talked to Andy, and Andy had been in accounting for, at least 25, 30 years. Okay. He liked numbers, but when I picked up the phone, obviously I wasn't the first person to reach out to him and talk to him, because Carol said, find him a job. So he started off with, well, I've been in accounting. I've done this. I did cost accounting. I did accounts payable. I did this, general ledger, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I let him go on for a couple minutes. And I went, Andy, don't care. What are you making so much at home? What kind of food are you making?
Yeah.
What? I said, Carol told me you are baking and cooking like crazy all day, every day. You love to cook? Oh, God, yeah, I love it. And bang, then he went off for like 20 minutes. I make this, and then I did this and this. Hey, did you know this? And he was going crazy. I'm like, okay, so this guy likes this. Well, there was, I didn't have anything that I could really get into right then and there for him. But I started looking, I started asking around, and there was a major company that I worked with that was called George Weston Bakeries in New Jersey. They were Entenmann's and Thomas English Muffins and Hostess and all of that. So, and this was around the holiday time, so I made a holiday visit to them. I said, look, if you need some holiday help, I have somebody that can do accounts receivable, accounts payable. He'll come in. Doesn't matter. You can pay him, the normal wage if you need him to come in. No, I don't really have anything. Well, 2 days later, I got the call. So, boom, I got Andy in. He's like, oh, that's, when I called him, I said, I've got a position open. He said, oh, okay, that sounds good. I was like, guess where it's at? I don't know. It says George Weston Bakeries. What? Oh, wow. Like, what is that? But he heard bakeries. And so it was great. So then I got him in. It was only like, I think it was a 1 month or 6 week position. When it came around week 5, I was checking in on him, and I actually went to the company, and we couldn't find him. And they're like, well, we don't know where he's at. He's usually on break about this time. I was like, oh, I know where he's at. He's downstairs every day talking to the bakers every day. And there was hundreds of them there because there's a huge facility. So he was just meandering around. He was back on time and everything. They wound up hiring him. He retired at George Weston Bakeries.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Because it was part of his intrinsic value. He could was he baking every day? No, but there was something there that drew him and got him excited about going. I mean, imagine pulling up and you smell that bakery smell. Like, oh, Carol was happy. She wasn't, so all this stuff was happening. It was great. So that's where the intrinsic value matches up and where it kind of marries to what the corporation could want. Did they have in any kind of job description, for an accounts payable person that they must love baking? No.
Right.
But that's what brings that person to work every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what's important, is find that little thing, even though it may not be directly related to your position. Find something that helps you to drive and go home and be like, I feel good today.
Right. That's great. Great tip. Great advice. So you personally recently announced that your employer has furloughed you and a bunch of other professionals.
Mm-hmm.
So what type of position are you looking for currently?
I'm pretty open. Obviously, something in talent acquisition. I prefer to, be hands-on with people. Mm-hmm. So I like to talk with people. I like to understand what their intrinsics, are, and really get to know the company itself. So I prefer to be sort of in-house or at least partnered with a company in a way that allows me to function as that extension of human resources or part of HR. Because what doesn't do it for me is being that line cook, burger, 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 burger.
Right.
I like to have that connection with people. I've also worked in higher education, so I like working with people who are just entering the workforce or a different part of the workforce, whether, no matter what age you are, or
Mhm.
people who are trying to kind of find where their niche is. So if you look on my LinkedIn profile, I'm also, a life coach. So part of that is being able to, find the right person for the role, but also find the right role for the person.
Right.
So that's where talent acquisition is pretty wide for me. So
Mhm.
corporate recruiting or working in what they call an RPO of some sort, or even getting into coaching, working with, education, because
Mhm.
I've got a sweet spot for that too, helping people develop into what's their first part of their next part of their career.
Yes.
Um, but for those that don't know what furloughed means, it doesn't mean, okay, lay off. They didn't have enough work. They
Okay.
didn't have enough work. So that's where, to lean back to another point, you know, this environment that we're in right now, no matter what position you're going for, what you're working in, there's a lot of strain on the US right now.
Mhm.
And there's not a lot of positions that are going on that there were 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Right.
So, even though you may be seeing a lot of positions out there, it doesn't mean that they're exactly right. It's not an even balance here. Sometimes they're looking for a unicorn,
Right.
and there are no unicorns out there. That's one frustration that recruiters have is like, wait a second, you want what? You want an accountant that likes to bake? So those are hard people to find. But that's my intrinsic is just as important, as
Sure.
anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, Jared. How can listeners or potential employers reach out to you? How can they find you?
Well, LinkedIn, that's kind of the best way. If you want to get a little bit more direct, or even if you have some questions, about what we talked about here today, you can email me at Jarod, JAROD .Brown, BROWN 31 at gmail.com.
Okay.
If you're a candidate or you're a young professional looking for some help, the only thing I would ask you to do is if you could CC Shelly as well on that email, so that we're kind of both staying in the loop here. If you forget, I'll just, I'm going to tell on you. I'll tell Shelly, okay, this person reached out to me, and we talked about this. And employers, LinkedIn, I'm up and monitoring that on a daily basis, as well as email. And of course, I'm on all of the regular job boards as well. That's another point is that, find out every job board that you can that is validated and a good job board,
Right.
like a Career Builder or ZipRecruiter, things like that. But there's some job boards out there that really don't seem like they're legit. Use your gut. If it
Right.
doesn't seem like it's legit, don't put your information up there, because sometimes they're
Yes.
just looking for info. But hit all the mains and normals and ask questions. Ask questions, get into that network, and start to look, because I'm in that network too, and I'm probably going to ask you a couple questions too.
Right. Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for being here today, and I wish you much success with your next chapter.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Sure. To my audience in the Lehigh Valley and surrounding areas, I have a great event coming up on Friday, May 17th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. It's the area's first dining, etiquette, and networking luncheon, and it will be held at the club at Twin Lakes in Allentown, PA. You just never know when you'll be asked to interview during a meal, entertain a potential client, or dine with a colleague. So it's really important that you know proper dining etiquette to make the right impression. Tickets are on sale right now at Ticket Tailor. Look for the Business Etiquette and Networking Luncheon. And tune in next Tuesday, April 23rd, for the next episode of the Young Professionals Career Catalyst.